if you have a stressor, a stress coming, you get acute stress. We need acute stress. We need lots of acute stress. And the reason why it's acute stress is that we know that we'll get over it. We know that we have the ability to pass through it and get out the other side. When you've got a low health creation index, it moves to chronic stress. There, the perception is that I'm not going to be able to get through. I'm out of control. I don't have the ability to be able to cope with that acute stress. So it goes to chronic stress. And in the body, acute stress is lots of adrenaline, butterflies, that kind of thing, all fine. Chronic stress is lots of cortisol and noradrenaline and other things. That's not good. It changes your entire body. Everything changes in that person when they're in chronic stress. And these stress hormones come out. And arguably, as I say there, that's probably the biggest cause of health problems. So poor health creation, chronic stress, negative emotions, and not really, they're all emotions to help us. They're anxiety, keep us away from danger. There's aggression, fight and flight. There's depression, sickness behavior. So all of those emotions actually are normal and they're there to protect us. But of course, in the light of everything else, they're not very pleasant to have. The unhealthy behaviors, we say, well, why don't you just go and do some exercise? Why don't you just eat a normal diet? Why don't people do that? Because our brains, when we're in chronic stress, are trying to get energy in. So we're vigilant. You don't want to be asleep when a hunter-gatherer and you're about to be killed by some bear. So when you're under chronic stress, you have less sleep, which is normal. You become inactive. There's a hormone that actually stops you being active when you're stressed. It's called ghrelin, and it's there to save energy. You don't want to be burning off excess energy when you're under stress. You've got to conserve every single calorie because as a hunter-gatherer or as an animal, you need to preserve those. Poor diet. Well, it's not really a poor diet. It's a diet to get as many calories in as possible. Fat and sugar, that's what we crave when we're chronically stressed. Why? Because you want those calories in. And we store it in our middle, so we get fatter down here. It's all normal. It's all protection. It's all completely the body doing exactly what it's designed to do. But we keep on saying, but I'm just rubbish at doing my gym. I keep on stopping. When you're chronically stressed, you're fighting against every single part of your body that's trying to protect you. What it wants you to do is to sit down and just eat. And then you'll be safe because you'll have loads of calories in there. And that is what your body, and addictions are really just a way of just masking that horrible feeling when you're stressed. But also your brain loses inhibitions. And that's on purpose, so you can make quick decisions. So when a lion is about to jump at you, you don't get a spreadsheet out and do a cost-benefit analysis of which side you're going to jump, you just jump. So all those inhibitory pathways have been got rid of under chronic stress, so addictions become much easier and they mask it. So that's the kind of what's happening, and if you take it all the way down, you start to get obesity and the gut biome, and then you get this chronic inflammation where the immune system is starting to catch up, and then you get mitochondrial dysfunction in the cells. This is all the really nasty stuff that's happening without us realizing it, and that leads to all the diseases. So that's health on a page. And it all started here. It doesn't start with unhealthy behaviors. You cannot make someone change their behavior if they're chronically stressed or if they're really in a bad way. We all know that from our own lives. And if you think there's this new energy constraint model, think of us as we can think of as a company, think of us as a kind of, we've got calories in and we have energy out. The species that are going to do the best need the least energy for the least calories for the most energy. So any organism that can convert efficiently calories to energy will win, and they'll do better. And the ones that can't do it will die out. And we're pretty good. In fact, the mitochondria, which is in the cell, is 99% efficient at changing calories to energy. It's the most efficient system, which is why every single living species does it. But the energy is split. You've got your vital energy, which is your heart going, your lungs and everything normally. You've got your growth, maintenance, repair, which is including our creativity in our brain, which is just helps us be who we are. And then you've got the stress. It's elastic. That can go up and down, which includes physical activity. So when you've got big stress, acute stress, you'll squeeze that chronic, that growth, maintenance, repair, because the vital energy has to keep going. You can't change that. So that gets squeezed. Acute stress, fine, lasts a day or two, and you're out of it. But you imagine that happening all the time for months and months and months and months. Where's the repair? You start to get problems, and the brain shuts down because it's such a gobbler of energy that the whole prefrontal cortex starts to shut down to conserve energy because you've got so little here to do it. And what we really should be doing is trying to increase that, reduce that chronic stress, but also just by having lower calories and actually physical activity makes that vital organ more efficient, slows the heart rate down. So the more fitness we can do. And then you've got massive amount of brain power, your cells are working, you're efficient, toxins have gone away. That's what we're trying to do.
I know, and I have been in many environments where you just don't feel safe, where there's that lack of psychological safety. One of the organisations I worked in many years ago, very psychologically unsafe environment, and I remember that our CEO would say, I don't really care about sorting this out right now, I just need to know who's to blame. And when you're all kind of trying to avoid this blame, it's like, who's coming for me? I'm going to be in trouble. You're under that pressure. You're feeling that, that tiger, that saber-toothed tiger coming at you, and you'll do anything to be able to avoid that. You're less likely to be innovative, you're less likely to be collaborative. NASA used to be a very unpsychologically safe company to work in, very hierarchical, and they were launching a rocket, and it was the first civilian being launched into space. I think she was a school teacher, and some of the more junior engineers had noticed that there were issues, and they kept trying to raise them, and the more senior people were being like, no, how dare you, you're junior here, this isn't the way we do things. They started to realise that the more that they were kicking up a fuss, the more they were there was black marks against them. It was making them suffer in terms of their roles. So they stopped saying anything. And then when the rocket actually went to take off, it exploded. And the things that the junior people had been raising were completely accurate, but because of the culture and the lack of safety, none of that stuff was listened to, which then had such a massive impact because people weren't able to challenge the status quo. And then we also need to have talked about embracing diverse perspectives. We are better, and Apple's catchphrase is, we are all different, and that's our greatest strength. Because it's like, how do you tap into all of these different resources you have? Instead of creating a culture and environment that only celebrates, listens to, and rewards the loudest, often it is the people who are active thinkers, can think on the spot, speak up in meetings, are good at networking, are good at kind of being visible. But there are so many people, introverts, reflectors, people with neurodivergence that actually need more time to be able to reflect, who need more time to be able to perhaps feedback through email. So giving people different ways to be able to capture people's thoughts is so important, and that creates inclusion, it creates safety, but it also gives you that competitive advantage because you are leveraging the skills of people that aren't always normally heard in classic meeting culture, classic communication culture.
Started with what wellbeing is not, because I think that's important because people assume it's really simple, it's really easy. It's not at all. So it's not. I'm not saying that everybody needs to down tools at 5 p.m. every day and leave, even when there's a pile of carbon fibre that needs to become a car in 2 days' time. That is not what wellbeing is. It's not just benefits. It's not a fluffy HR topic. If you start there, then people might start thinking, okay, well, I'm not going to be told that well-being is this easy thing we need to focus on. Then you can start to move towards what it actually is. You might not even call it well-being. We haven't quite decided on that. Well-being can be off-putting to people who don't believe in it. You might call it sustainable high performance. You might call it human fitness. Whatever it is, I think it needs to be really bespoke to the industry and team that you're in, so that you're speaking the language of your leaders, your managers. And once you've identified that narrative, you can start to weave together all the things that you want to do.